John, you're going to ask the first question.
Thanks, Andrew. A couple of days ago, the CEO, Tracy Slatter, CEO of Port Phillip, Tracy Slatter, announced her resignation, and this is a couple of questions related to that. Given the key roles of CEOs in local government, what does this mean for a new council that's going to come in without a CEO from December? Why has she resigned? And the state government is looking at local government reform, with one of the key outcomes being a new power arrangement between CEOs and the council. And I'm just wondering what opportunities this might present to the new council.
Can I start with you? Would you like to have a go at that?
Look, let me start with the third question first, the power relationship between the CEO and the council. So back in the days of Kennett, there was an amendment called the Port Phillip Amendment, because when we came in 96, we made certain decisions on the basis of what we stood for that contradicted the role of the CEO in managing staff. And that was seen to be a poor first step in governance. And so the Port Phillip Amendment, which I believe is sort of Part 7 of the Local Government Act, 7A of the Local Government Act, don't quote me, essentially says that the CEO runs the place other than to the hiring and firing of the CEO is in the hands of the council, but still strictly regulated. And it all depends on your version of local government about whether those amendments were good, bad or indifferent. My view is that it is welcome that we're now re-examining the relationship between officers and councillors. And we'll have to see how that debate pans out. On this particular case, City of Port Phillip, pretty soon after the last two elections, the CEO has left. And that is because the City of Port Phillip is so hotly contested, and it is often the case that given the enormous powers of the CEO, and there's always going to be a level of disquiet brought up in debates prior to an election, that the CEO ends up going. This is three in a row. It's extraordinary. It's stock market would call it a trend, and so I think it's pretty bad in that we've got this trend, even though you could probably mount a case against all three CEOs, except the middle one. I thought she was sad we lost her, but I think that we have to ask ourselves, why is this pressure such that CEOs see the election as a catalyst for their departure? It goes completely against the Westminster model of continuity, the CEO being able to work for every government that's ever elected. So,
can I get Jennifer's view on that? Would you like to?
I was going to suggest there's actually a simpler answer than what you've proposed, and that is, in this incident, the current council only gave a 4-year contract. Now, when do you think that 4-year contract ends? It ends very early in 2017. So if you were the CEO at the City of Port Phillip and you were aware that there was, commentary in social media and certainly among some prospective candidates that they think that you should go, what would you do?
But that's my point, Jen. It is a self-fulfilling trend.
Yeah. Whereas if a contract was given for 5 years, then the CEO has an opportunity to see if there is a working relationship with the incoming council, and if it isn't workable, then they take the action that they see fit. But it's almost a recipe for this, if you only appoint for a 4-year term.
That's true, but there's no doubt that the level of distrust between the future embryonic council and the incumbent CEO is such that she did the prudent thing
Yep.
and looked for a great gig. So there's plenty of reasons why Tracy left. She's going to a great gig, suits her personal life, it's all that sort of thing. But still, 3 elections, 3 new CEOs.
Richard, do you have a view on this?
Yeah, look, I think we can speculate what's happened, but I think it's good that the new council's got a choice, frankly. I think that's really good. Look, I sort of tend to agree with Dick. I think if you look at the life history, the period of CEOs are in place in this country now, unfortunately it's very short, 2 or 3 years, that's about it, and they all change. So I think 4 years is actually a reasonable term.
Lucky they're paid a fortune.
I'm really interested in the new, I don't know if you've seen the new rules that the government's proposing. I was disappointed that the council that's just going out really rejected in their submission to the state about giving the mayor more power. I think it's essential that the mayor does have more power, because I think the model is very too corporate, and I think the citizens need more say, and that was a measure to give the mayor more power. The councillors seem to have rejected on the basis that it was bad because the mayor got more power and sort of somehow brought her above the rest of the councillors. I think leadership's important, so I think that's a good move. The other 2 things that are really in there, which they didn't object to, is that we're going to get more, through the Audit and Risk Committee, more say over the procurement contracts, which is really important because so much is outsourced in this council now. We need really good scrutiny over those. And the second one is about manning levels. We will have a much bigger say about manning levels in the council. So I think, though, I hope those things will go through, that legislation will go through, and that the mayors also will have more power.
Catherine, can I bring you in here? Have you got a view on this?
Well, just to say that I'm also not going to speculate around reasons for the departure, but that it does put the incoming group of councillors in a position where they'll have to work collaboratively to make sure that this transition is a productive one, that goes smoothly and benefits residents. And to the point of whether there's an imbalance, I know there's been some discussion and various views put forward on this. I think if the public elects candidates that have a vision, there is plenty of scope within the current bounds of the Local Government Act for councillors to work together to realise that vision. So I think it is a pretty drastic event to be facing, but I don't think that I think it presents an opportunity rather than...
John, are you satisfied with what you're hearing here?
I think generally I'd be concerned that, like Dick, that there is this constant turnover at the top. I think it's very important that the working relationship between the new council and the senior staff is established early on, but that there's very strong community input and consultation, because the formulation of the council plan is the critical thing, and for the council not to have a CEO in place a permanent CEO in place as that's being developed, that's a very serious issue.
And John's point there speaks to the practicalities versus the theory. I can't fault what you were saying, Richard, except when you look at what a new incoming council has to do within the first 6 months. They have to have in place, they have to have come up with a 4-year strategic plan that is, signed off by state government. This is in the setting where they're not going to have a CEO. So you're making it really, really difficult for a new council who not only have to do that very hard strategic thinking work, they actually have to form a bond to be able to work together collaboratively.
And remember, there's always a bloodbath with the new CEO. I mean, that's the grim reality. So after Spokes left, there was a bloodbath. Number 2 left. Dick,
what do you mean by a bloodbath? What form does that take? Is this councillors fighting with each other? Is it?
No. Senior executives move on. So it's more disruptive than you would imagine. It's always disruptive, and I speak to officers who have left it in both periods of transition, and they all had real or imagined grievances with the new CEO, so they all leave. The loss of talent is extraordinary. Now, some of the replacements might be better, who knows? It's very hard to assess, but what isn't hard to assess is that it's mightily disruptive.
Ben, can I bring you in here? You're standing in Canal Ward,
Yep.
and transparency is one of the issues that you're standing on. Listening to this, what are your views? What's your take on what you're hearing?
I've always found when you've got a new CEO coming in, a new top dog, they're going to bring with them a new skill set, maybe a better skill set, and they're going to bring great people with them. They generally want to put their stamp on any business, let's call it a business, on any business that they're running. So I would like to think that council could work with that new CEO and make sure that we've got all the right levels of transparency in place.
But we're not running a business. It's not running a business. Having worked in both local government and state government, the level of disruption is not just at the senior levels, it's all the way down. And it is different from running a business.
I've got a real passion. I think Australians, if you put us in a really good working environment, we're the best workers in the world, and that should be pretty flat. You put us in a pyramid, we're the worst workers in the world. And I have to admit, my observation over the last 4 years is that the council has become stacked. You know, it's pretty stacked. I think the biggest culture change might be to level it out, to have a flatter structure in the council.
So when you say stacked, in what sense is it stacked?
Well, my understanding is there's been several layers of management added over the last 4 years, and it's really, you know, I don't think Australians work very well on that culture. So
Richard, can I just corroborate that and say that the departing officers I've spoken to mightily resented the departure from earlier times when there was a really flat structure, and that meant that relatively junior people have the responsibility to make calls. And you might say that's scary, but you might also say that it's exciting, it gives incentives to those more junior officers, and yeah, I mean, I think I'm with Richard on that. And can I just say one thing though, that under the old current legislation, our views wouldn't have any power to influence the CEO because that's CEO territory. And, you know, I think you're an incredibly well-credentialed person to contribute to this, but under the current regime, you could not bind the CEO. You would be... I don't think
the new legislation, though, is going to make a huge change to that model, though.
Yeah.
It's some of the way, and I think let's experiment with that.
The other thing I have to say is that around the sector, there are some incredibly low calibre mayors and councillors. So, you know, the state government has to legislate with everyone in mind. And, you know, you were talking about the power of leadership. I really like that. But then I think the Mayor of Geelong.
But he was elected in his own right. Melbourne and Geelong. So it's very different.
It's a bit of a different model, but like, you know, that was a terrible story for local government.
Janet Bolitho, can I bring you in here? You're a former mayor and a two-term mayor of the city. You're listening to issues really about managerialism and the nature of the executive power in the council. What are your views on hearing what you're hearing here?
Well, I'd just like to pick up on a few things people have said and just to reinforce the point that the councillors make one appointment and one appointment only. They appoint only one member of staff, and that is the CEO. So I think what Catherine said was so right, that the way in which the council comes together in order to translate what they've heard through the election process into the values and the qualities and the attributes. So rather than the CEO bringing their vision, the views that you've taken from your combined constituencies are somehow knitted together to find expression in the kind of CEO that you seek. So I would, really put down the challenge to every candidate that of all the decisions you make in your term, this is probably the most critically important one. And if there's any advantage to Tracy having made her intentions known early, at least you know this is something that's coming up, and you can prepare for it, even though I share Dick's view that the disruption is...
Janet, knowing the
considerable.
field of candidates, you've seen the field of candidates standing. Do you have faith that of those who are elected that they will be able to come together and come to a decision collectively fairly quickly on a replacement?
Well, we've yet to have the election.
Understood.
But I've
There's something you're
certainly,
not telling us.
having attended a candidate forum in the Gateway Ward where all the candidates conducted themselves with exemplary respect and courtesy, I have to put my faith that the election process will throw up the people who are best to serve our community.
Yep.
Can I just finish by saying two things? One, I'm anti-bonuses. You know, they get a salary, they deliver a service, that's it. Simple. The other thing is, in this room is a former CEO who was knifed by a particularly low-calibre council. And so, you know, bad things happen both ways.
Yeah.